This is a special message from a DC fan to Warner Brothers, the company putting together the DC cinematic universe. This is not a rant video, it's not me trolling Warner Brothers or anything like that. This is just me as a fan genuinely trying to give constructive criticism to help Warner Brothers better gauge what the fans want. Because now that Suicide Squad is the third DC movie in a row that is certified rotten, even though I don't think it should, I think it's completely unfair that it gets that score. It's nowhere near as bad as the critics pretend, but it's undeniable that Warner Brothers is in real trouble with the DCU. Something is not right here. And it seems to me that a lot of the issues that are getting in the way of DC's success stem from the same source. There is a disconnect between the fans and Warner Brothers, whether it's because Warner Brothers is misinterpreting what the fans want, or perhaps they don't know how to properly measure what the fans want. Whatever the reason, this is an attempt to try and build a bridge between us, DC fans, and Warner Brothers, so that not only can we all get better movies that we want, but they can also be more in tune with us, and Warner Brothers can start getting the success and making the big money that they want. So that's what we all want. It's win-win for everybody. So I've divided this video up into three main issues that I think Warner Brothers should look at, but most importantly included some practical steps of how I think they could turn things around without having to spend insane amounts of money on loads of reshoots and rewrites and all that. First off, slow down, Warner Brothers. The trouble with rolling out so many movies so fast is you have no time to change directions if you need to, because the next movie is already half done by the time you get any feedback for the latest release. You rushed into Batman v Superman so fast after Man of Steel, you didn't have time to make Superman more bright and optimistic like people wanted. Now it seems that you've been able to finally apply that feedback for Justice League, but you would have been able to do that back with Batman v Superman if you had just waited a little bit to gauge the reaction of the audience before you started filming. And now Suicide Squad has come out, and any feedback from that will likewise fall on deaf ears for Wonder Woman because you guys have already finished filming it. See, the reason that Marvel can pump out multiple movies at the same time, at the speed that they do, and not run into this same problem is because they've already had the time to establish each character individually first. So they've had the time to know what works for each of the characters. But you don't have that luxury, so you at least need to slow it down. Otherwise, you'll make 5 movies at once, and if they don't work, then you got 5 movies that all miss the mark. Just slow it down and figure out what movie you're making before you start filming. Now, this is feedback from the audience that I feel Warner Brothers is really struggling with, because even the fan base itself is arguing this point. But I do have a compromise that I think might work. But the feedback is the tone of these movies, specifically the light tone versus the dark tone. And I understand that Warner Brothers is kind of in a jam with this, because it seems a lot of people are widely critical of the overly dark and depressive tone, but if they make it too light, on the other hand, people will just say they're ripping off Marvel, and there are many DC fans who say they don't want DC to be like Marvel. So it kind of seems like they're stuck no matter which way they go. But there is a happy medium, and it lies with the characters themselves. See, Marvel is 100% light. Even in certain stories that are actually supposed to be more dark, it's still 100% light. On the other hand, the DC movies have gone to the other extreme. It's 100% dark, which people don't like either. But the great thing about the Justice League in the comics is that it's a little bit of everything. If you want that light, optimistic tone, you have Superman. If you want that darker, grittier tone, you have Batman. If you want more comedic, you've got the Flash. If you want more mystical, you got Wonder Woman. If you want the weird and the wacky, you got Aquaman. And seeing all of those different characters interact together with each other is incredibly interesting. So it doesn't have to be all dark or all light. You just have to let the characters be comic book accurate in terms of their personalities, and you get a mixture. That's something that Marvel doesn't have. Everyone on the Avengers is more or less the same in terms of tone. They're all the joke-cracking, funny people. Having a mixture and a contrast within the Justice League will set DC apart from Marvel without having to paint everyone with the same dark and gritty brush. In other words, make the tone of the DC universe like a lava lamp, both a mixture of light and dark that's in constant motion, constant movement. That's why lava lamps are so hypnotic, and the Justice League should be like that. I realize this is all very sort of broad and vague talk here, so let me actually give an example to help demonstrate what I'm talking about more. In the comic book Hush, Superman and Batman defeat Poison Ivy with Catwoman helping them out. When they capture Poison Ivy, Catwoman just goes and punches her out immediately. Superman turns and says, "Was that really necessary?" Then Batman and Catwoman look at each other and then answer back in unison, "Yes." Now see, that's interesting, because contrasting values within the same team. See, if Catwoman had just punched out Poison Ivy and Superman had just stood there stoic with his arms crossed, then all three of them would have seemed grim and gritty and dark. But that contrast makes that scene a lot more interesting. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Contrasting values, contrasting tones within the same team. Now, I mentioned in the opening that I feel a lot of issues DC is grappling with come from the disconnect between them and the fans, and their attitude towards the online fans is a big part of that. And look, I don't have like any surveys or any stats to prove what I'm about to say to you. I'm just speaking from the heart as a fan, telling you the vibe I get. And it's that Warner Brothers seems to view the online fan base as the enemy rather than an ally. And this is a distinct difference when you look between how Marvel interacts with its online fan base and how DC does. And it's most visible at Comic-Con. And yes, I know Comic-Con is not an online thing, it's a convention, but come on, the people who are there are the online fan base, they're just in the flesh for that event. But at Marvel's panels, it's like a rock concert. They put on a show. Actors show up in costume and they do a whole bit for the crowd, they field questions from the audience, and there's a real love fest. It's not just the fans' love to Marvel, it's Marvel's love right back to the fans. The DC panels, however, whole different story. This really dawned on me back with that Comic-Con that they did while they were still filming Batman v Superman. You guys remember that, when Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot all came out and we're all like, oh my god, what are they gonna say? And they didn't say anything. They just sort of awkwardly stood there for a few seconds, didn't take any questions from the audience, stared down at everyone. They showed like a clip of Batman with the bat signal and Superman floating through the bat signal in the sky, after which they did everything they could to prevent it from getting online, banning anyone who dared to post it. Look, Marvel also tries to prevent leaking trailers from Comic-Con and all that sort of stuff, but overall, they're really good with their copyright on YouTube and the like. They respect fair use. They don't try to penalize people for using little snippets and trailers and stuff. Even when whole trailers get leaked, they don't lash out at the fans for it. They just tweet, "Damn it, Hydra," or something like that, and release the proper one. Warner Brothers is notoriously militant with their copyrights online, even though 99% of all things on YouTube comply with fair use. They don't care. It's like Warner Brothers just is personally going after their fans who want to share their enjoyment of something DC. This different attitude is also seen in how the two studios handle it when fans don't like something that they do. Remember when everyone got mad at Marvel for the Mandarin twist in Iron Man 3? Well, they did a Marvel one-shot, Hail to the King, fixing it. Now granted, we all know that they're probably never going to go back to that character again in the movies, but just the fact that they even made that is cool enough that the fans felt respected, and now no one even talks about that anymore. But with a lot of the decisions that DC makes that the fans get angry about, DC never addresses them. Never. Or if they do, it's usually with a dismissive kind of, well, they don't know what we're planning, so their opinions are irrelevant. Gee, thanks, Warner Brothers. Look, this might just seem like I'm a whining fanboy who's crying because his feelings are hurt, but when fans are consistently ignored and dismissed, and are constantly being force-fed something they don't want, eventually what happens is half of them just leave because they know they're never going to get what they want, but the ones who stay kind of turn into these golems. They can't leave their precious behind, but it sort of twists them into something horrible, and they stick around just to hate on it. This is called John Cena syndrome, or more recently Roman Reigns syndrome. Now, I don't think the DC fanbase is quite at that point yet, but it's halfway there. And trust me, DC, you don't want it to get to that point, because unlike the WWE, who can just rotate out certain wrestlers if things are getting a bit too toxic, you can't do that with the characters here, because you've already committed so much time and money into building this universe, so you have to make this work. You can't afford to have the fan base turn John Cena syndrome on you. So you have to embrace the online audience, and I've got some very simple ideas as to how you can do that with the next segment. So taking all of this advice, what are some practical steps that DC can do to rebuild trust with the fans, to balance out the tone of the movies, and to better gauge what the audience wants for future movies that aren't yet already being filmed? Number 1, online mini stories. Just earlier I mentioned the Marvel one-shot Hail to the King that fixed the Mandarin twist. That was not just a good way of settling down the angry fans, but also of doing a bit of revisionist history with the movie. DC could use a bit of that. why not start releasing very short features online covering some of the bigger issues that people have problems with, and you don't need to spend loads of cash to get like the actors back and get them in costume and film for a day. Not at all. You don't have to do any of that because you can animate it. Warner Brothers already has a whole animated division. Why not outsource this job to them? I mean, how expensive could it be to get like a short 5-minute story animated? Wouldn't be that expensive. There's people on YouTube that do that every day. You could cover all kinds of topics in these little mini episodes, such as a story set between Man of Steel and Batman v Superman that sort of shows how Superman killing Zod affected him and how he came to terms with it and overcame it. You could have the story of what really happened with Lex Luthor and his father, how he murdered his father. How did all that go down? What really happened? Or how about the death of Robin? Whether that was what led to Batman giving up his no-killing rule. Or how about something like an episode extending Feora's story, showing what life is like for her being trapped in the Phantom Zone and all the weird other alien criminals that are in there. I'd love something like that. With Suicide Squad, maybe you could show a bit more of that Joker and Harley Quinn relationship and how all that came about. Hell, you guys already have the footage for that was cut from the movie. You don't even need to animate that. You could release that today. I'm sure you probably want to save it for like special features on the Blu-ray, but who cares? Just release it online as the first in these mini episodes, a gift to the fans to get all the fans back on your side again. If you did this, the fans would circle the wagon around you, we would support you, we would defend you from the critics, and you in turn would gain a much better understanding of what the audience wants. Number 2, create an online command center. Warner Brothers already has a YouTube channel where they release their trailers. I recommend starting another one just for these online mini episodes. Maybe you could bring in someone like Max Landis to write some of the first few episodes. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to do it, and he's got a massive following online, so that'd really help. And with a new channel, you could like calibrate it so that the videos released on that are not militantly protected by copyright. Remember, the point of this is to embrace the online fans. So those are some of my ideas as to how to make DC great again. So I'm Bandit, this is Bandit Incorporated. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, I will see you guys in the comments. Well guys, leading up to the release of Suicide Squad has seen a huge surge of online interest. And when I went to see this movie today at like 3:45 PM on a Thursday afternoon, there was a big long line for tickets, which at that time of day is kind of weird.